Alright, so now let's do our accessories, and let's start up from the top. So let's zoom in where we can see her head nicely. And let's do her head pieces here, and the bells and everything, the ears. So let's first decide on what color this is going to be. So I've actually always thought that it was going to be, since her hair is pink and kind of purple, it would actually make a little bit more sense if her headdress was actually more black, or leaning towards black, or purplish black. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in my orchid. I'm going to make it more of like a violet black. So as you can see, the violet will not, will basically look kind of, it won't look as good when it comes to looking at the hair. Like, okay, if you see the hair and then you see this does not stand out very well. So you want it to actually be darker so that this pops out more. So that's the idea of contrasting between light and dark. You don't want to just, make everything a monoculture or monocolor piece. So this doesn't need that much, this doesn't need really all that much coloring. Take a dark brown, now let's color a darker one on top. So as you can see, because this is darker, now this stands out in comparison to, what's it called? Our hair. So this is just kind of creating a base here. See? This starts to liven, just kind of become more alive. Now I'm taking a black now, and I'm going to be drawing shadows in every crease, just to kind of separate these forms. And towards the end, I want this to be more dark, so it stands out more. And that's good for the headdress here. Now, when it comes to the ears, I have a bit of a plan here. So here, the inside is going to be pink, just because that's kind of normal. That's kind of a standard thing to do, is just make the insides pink, which is totally fine. But this is just going to be layered in gently. So I'm taking a bubblegum pink and a pink, and just layering these colors on top. These don't need much work. However, the inside might need a little bit more work, so this is actually going to be more of a purple color. So it's going to be same color as her hair. So I'm using a pale rose just to, actually it's going to be a lighter variety of her hair. So I'm going to use a pale rose as our lightest color. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use an orchid. And then I'm going to color in little fluffs. So color in the fluffs here, kind of color in the edges where there will be shadows. And that's good for her ear fluffs. Now for the bells, that'll be kind of fun. Take a yellow and then color on top very, very lightly. I'll show you how to do a metallic texture in this. Then take your golden yellow and then start lining in different areas. So make sure it's round and make sure it's nice and thick, and then you leave some bits of yellow, this lighter yellow, behind, and leave some areas more intense. Then take a light orange and just repeat. Draw in the shadows where the strap goes along the bell. The key about metallic shading or just values is that there's harsh and then there's extremes. There's extreme highlights and extreme darkness. Right now we're just building upon that right now. And notice how these yellow or golden bells would match in with the eyes. So that's another thing that I'm doing. So now I'm going to be taking a harvest gold here, and I'm going to be just repeating where I drew my shadows. Just make it darker and easier to see the values. And about this time, I'm actually going to put in a dark brown or a brown first. Let's put in brown first. It's light brown. Let's do a brown. And then trace in where the shadows are. If you see any flakes, just blow them away. And there you have bells. You know, some nice streaks up on top. You can even add a little bit of shadow along these straps here, or along the rings here. That kind of can create a nicer reflective look. If you want really, really big highlights or really strong highlights, use a white gel pen. And then just dot in the whites. And that'll make it a little bit more powerful. So that is how you do bells. Now let's do our ribbons. Now our ribbons are going to be a similar thing to what we did with our skirt. So I'm going to take a, where is it? Taking a number 1, and I'm going to be tracing in stripes along these areas here. Because I don't want it to just be, you know, plain pink. I want there to be some interest. So let's do that. And that gives it, once again, some more visual interest and some contrast. Let's add some stripes here as well. There. Actually, let's add one more stripe. Just a thinner one. Along the bottom and along here. There. So now it kind of matches our skirt. And once we wait while we wait for that to dry, let's go ahead and do the belt. The belt's going to be easy. We just want to just color this in really, really lightly. And then take a magenta, or sorry, raspberry. So this, what I just used was pink. This was pink for that. Now I'm going to be using raspberry. And then I'm going to draw some streaks just to kind of show that this kind of shiny. There. Shiny. So once this is dry, then we can take this pink again and let's color in. Whoa, that may not have dried. There. Color lightly so it doesn't, you know, disturb the colors. So it doesn't disturb the ink, which it kind of already did, but it doesn't matter. It's fine. Now, let's take our bubblegum pink and color on top darker this time. Press pretty hard for this one because we want to make sure that this is nice and opaque. Now let's take our raspberry and then color inside the folds here. So this is going to be a satin-like texture, so I'm going to be putting darkness along the edges here and making the inside, or this area here, more in highlights because it's more of like a reflective material. Do the same thing on both sides. Make two sides two sides dark and then one side more on the light. Of course, you know, you want to add your shadows. That's how you make a more reflective looking cloth ribbon. So now let's go ahead and draw in our gloves, which will be pretty nice. Our gloves are going to be black and pink, as always. So let's take in an orchid and roughly color that. So once again, starts as our base. color everything. Whoops. Try not to color areas that you never intended to color by accident. Oh well, it doesn't really matter. We can always erase it out with our kneaded eraser if you can. So try the best you can to use your kneaded eraser and erase any areas that you accidentally colored. So as you can see, kind of just picking the lead off of the paper. There. Now it's all gone. Mostly gone. Let's do the same thing down here. So once you have our base, you can go ahead and use a dark brown. Let me see where my dark brown went. Once again, and color on top. This is our warm violet or purplish black that we're creating. So everything, when it comes to layering is key. Just fill everything. Then I'm going to take a black, and I'm going to be putting in the shadows here. The reason why I put a shadow here is because these fingers are kind of overlapping on top of her hand, so I'm making this part more in shadow. So I'm also putting shadows in between each paw so that we can see where it is, where each section is, and fill that all in. Here's a little bit of shadow, so I'm making it extra dark right there. And for dark ruffles, you want to put the down-facing ruffles, you want to make those darker. And once again, if you want to make it more bold, you can use your dark pen, which I will do later. So this is good enough for now. Now let's do this side. Any inner corners, you want to shade it in black. This will generally be pretty dark because she's putting her hand in between her thighs, right? So then that will kind of create a shadow from the legs. Once again, create a little bit of shadow in between each finger pad so that it shows that, there's 3 fingers rather than just one flat medium. So that looks good for now. Now let's go and put in our paws. So our paws will be pink. Let's use our bubble gum for this, and let's color lightly on top. Let's color in the pads. So just this one here. Now let's take our raspberry and then shade this in on the sides. So kind of shade them as if you're rendering spheres. There's probably a little bit more in shadow because it's covered by the fingers. And then as it goes lower, it gets a little bit brighter because it's more exposed to the light. There. If you want, we can even take a white gel pen and clean up her nails because you don't want any dark spots on her nails, right? Or else that looks kind of dirty. So do that here as well, kind of put a bit of a nail there. And right now it looks a little bit messy, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my number 1 pen again and make an outline on top. Just to kind of show where everything is. Let's add a little bit of thickness around the ruffle area, just to kind of make it stand out. Same thing down here, so it doesn't look messy. So boldness creates clarity, so you want to use that when you need clarity. It doesn't always have to be everywhere, but it has to be, you just have to make sure that everything is clear to see. There. Now for the band, it's going to be pink again. So color that in, like so, and color this part in, like so. Then take a raspberry, and then, like the ribbon, we kind of color in pockets. Some shadow, and then some highlight, and then some shadow again. Highlight, shadow, highlight, shadow. And of course, if you want to make that pop out, use a dark outline, like so. Then down here as well. Boom. A lot more, pops out a lot more, doesn't it? So that is good for the paws, that's pretty nice. And now finally for the boots. Now the boots, this is going to be pink and this is going to be black. So let's get in our pink once again. I know it's a lot of pink and black and pink and black. Let's take our bubble gum. And these are going to be light colored, light colored boots, so I'm not going to go too intense on these. So I'm just going to be coloring these lightly. Same thing over here. As you can see, the black creates contrast with the white, or the pink, and therefore it makes the design look a lot more clear to look at. Now I'm going to be using a pink and coloring on top. I'm coloring in a circular motion to make sure that it's even in color and tone. I'm going to add a little bit of this raspberry just to kind of put in a dark value. So let's add in around the folds here. I imagine these to be kind of like rubber boots, like raincoat boots or something, just because it's kind of cute. So I'm adding a little bit of shadow around these edges here and around the folds. Create a shadow because, obviously the dress creates a bit of a shadow underneath. And where it's round, you want to add a little bit of a turning, like a little bit of a halftone. So you want to see that if this is going around in space, you want to add a little bit of a shadow there. So it looks like it's more 3D. Add a bit of a turning edge here as well. And then a dark area right there. For a more rubber-like feel, take your gel pen. Come on, don't roll away here. Take your gel pen and draw some nice highlights on top, if you can. Along the edges is nice. Overall, to kind of create that rubber-like feeling. Kind of almost like platform boots. Get back here. Alright, and now let's take our number 1 again. Now let's fill in our ribbons here. Let's add a little bit of our buttons here. There. Let's add a stripe just to kind of, make this kind of repeat the same pattern. And when it comes to our boots, I'm actually going to fill this all black. Leave a little bit of highlights, because it's kind of like maybe like a shiny black or something. So shadow, highlight, shadow, highlight, smaller, shadow, highlight, shadow. So just kind of alterate these a little bit, just to kind of make it look a little bit shiny. Same thing here. Shadow, highlight, and then a bit of shadow turning edge. Once it dips, make it a little bit dark, and then highlight as it goes upward. Make sure they're not all the same size here, or else it'll look kind of weird. That's good for now. So, we're getting really close now. Let's wait for that to dry before we move on to anything. Move on to coloring in the highlights. Although we don't have to color in the highlights, but... Oh, forgot. Here. There. So let's see what this looks like in total. Let me zoom out. This is what the character looks like so far. So far, so good. I'm liking how she looks. She looks super cute and really, really nice. So now our final one is our wings. And I'm even thinking just making those black as well. But I kind of want there to be a gradient. I was almost thinking like a purple to pink gradient. But maybe I'll do pink to purple instead. So let's go ahead and once again fill this with our pink. Don't worry about the hair too much. Let's just fill it in. In fact, I might even just be satisfied with just making the wings pink. Because why not? Sometimes a flat color is nice. In fact, I actually kind of like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to continue coloring this in. I'm not going to add any shadow to this because I want this to almost kind of be like a flat image, just to make a statement. It's going to, just kind of support the character rather than distract from the character. So I'm just going to make this just completely just this color. Alright, and actually maybe just a little bit, because why not? Bubblegum, once again, just do it at the tips. Just do that right on the tips here, so it kind of has a little bit of neat ombre. And then maybe a little bit of orchid, just to kind of get that nice purple edge in there. So as you can see, that nice purple edge is really, really nice. You can also add that in there as well. So small gradients are nice too. Alright, our whole character is done. Let me know what you guys think. Hopefully that this helped a bunch, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.